because I was reading it. It was really interesting. And I have some thoughts on that, particularly as it pertains to the very important act of economic survival. Uh, as you guys know, one thing about wealth is that we talk consistently about how wealth is a team sport. And unfortunately, that's not a message that we tend to get in a lot of spaces. We tend to get this sort of rugged individualism message, which is very sad to me because it ends up, a lot of people get hurt by that nonsense when we're sort of told that it's all about you and nobody else. Really, family is really something that does pop up quite consistently as it pertains to wealth. And I would encourage you not to forget that. I would encourage you to just understand. And here's the other thing about family. When I talk about family, I'm not just talking about, marriage and kids. I'm really talking about something that we actually have discussed. Again, in the Black Business School, we don't just sort of lean on the traditional ideas. Our goal is to innovate and to find specific, unique solutions for the Black community. That's what we do in the Black Business School. This is what we discuss at the All Black National Convention. So one of the concepts that I brought up to you guys, and I wrote about this in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, is you want to think about who your economic family is. And the economic family is basically the group of people that you're able to build wealth with, the people that you're able to trust. Building wealth together requires a few things, among others. You have to trust each other. You all have to be able to bring something to the table in terms of a commitment and a willingness to do what is necessary to engage in the asset accumulation process. The asset accumulation process may consist of saving, it consists of labor, it consists of investing, it consists of all these things that unfortunately we're not really trained very accurately on in society. And also it requires a degree of economic awareness, like little things like the cost of college tuition. I watched this crazy interview this morning with a university president. I think she was at American University, if I'm not mistaken. And they asked her, they said, what are you doing to reduce the cost of tuition at university? She said, the president of Purdue, he froze the cost of tuition because he agreed that it was too high, and they've frozen it for the last several years. And they said, well, what are you doing? Why can't other universities do that? And I kid you not, it was the most evasive interview I've ever seen. This lady clearly didn't answer the question. She literally said nothing of value in that interview. I couldn't believe it. And it's just kind of interesting because these universities kind of stay on this interesting money train where they want to do things like debt forgiveness and all that, but they don't want to give up any of their money, right? So they're like, yeah, if the government pays the loans, that's fine because we still make our money. But if they were to ask the universities to charge a lower rate of tuition, well, no, we can't do that. That's not going to work. That's not appropriate. And so you have little debt traps like that that will absolutely sink your wealth. In fact, I've mentioned to you guys many times before that the average Black college graduate defaults on their student loans, or better yet, the 50% of all Black people who graduate from college end up not being able to repay their student loans. So if you want to compare that, that's like a company that gets started and they borrow a bunch of money to create their company, their corporation, and the corporation can't pay its debts. Well, what happens to a company that can't pay its debts? Answer me in the chat. What happens to a company when it can't pay its debts, right? They have a term for this. It starts with a B. Write that term in the chat. What is that company is technically what? What is that? What is the term? Yeah, it's called bankruptcy. And so so here's the thing. It's kind of crazy that the most educated among us are the most likely to go bankrupt financially. It doesn't feel like bankruptcy because what happens is that you can kind of live on a debt bubble your entire life, and then the debt never gets repaid, but yet you're still okay with that because like, what do you care? You'll be dead, and your children are going to pay the price, and your grandkids won't have any inheritance because of whatever, right? So I'm not making fun of anybody in this category, but what I'm saying is that economic awareness is extremely important. So let me dig up this article and kind of read it to you. And this article talks about what a single person needs in order to live in different cities. And I'm looking for this. I was reading a bunch of stuff this morning. Here we go. The salary a single person needs to get by in every state in the United States. So I'm gonna read some samples here and read some of the article. And they said, let's see, in Hawaii's the worst. If you live in Hawaii as a single person, they said that you need to make $112,000 a year to get by in Hawaii. That's wow. So this is according to Go Banking Rates. They calculated the minimum amount for a single person based on what they call the 50-30-20 rule, which says that you use 50% of your income to cover your necessities like housing and utility, 30% to go toward discretionary spending like money that you just enjoy, and then 20% is left for savings or investments. So they said Hawaii is their living wage is more than double what many single people earn in the U.S., where the median income for full-time workers is $57,200 per the Labor Bureau. In Mississippi, however, the average wage is $45,906. So the top five states here on this list are Hawaii at $112,000, Massachusetts at $87,900, California at $80,000, New York at $73,000, Alaska at $71,000. Now, one of the reasons that Hawaii is so high is because it's an island, basically. Obviously, not basically, definitely. It's a bunch of islands, right? So they have to ship everything in. They can't actually use trucks and trains and all that. So it makes everything much more expensive. Now, let's see here. I'm looking at some other states here. I want to see like if they have like a list of the bottom five. Well, I'll just grab some random states. Nevada's 58,580, Nebraska's 49,000, Montana's 57,000, Missouri's 47,000. Let me see here. Wyoming 49,000, Wisconsin 53,000, West Virginia 47,000, Washington is 65,000. Let's see, Vermont is 65,000. Pennsylvania is 54,000. Oregon is 65,000. Oklahoma 46, Ohio 50, North Dakota 52, North Carolina 53, New York 73. We read that earlier. New Mexico 51, New Jersey 64. Now this article is it is right here on CNBC. And you can find it there. I don't know how to cut and paste. I can't. It's hard to cut and paste the link in here. So, but it's interesting. And here's what this article got my attention. One of the interesting things about that article to me is it let me know that I'm a little old fashioned. I'm a little old fashioned because I just kind of thought it was strange that all the economic assumptions that are being made are assuming that we're all single. That that no one has the ability to stay married or work together or have a family or anything like that. And I'm gonna just tell you like this, based on what I see. Again, I go into my own ideas when it comes to economic thinking. I rarely follow the bandwagon. I don't think what everybody else thinks, because when you're a professor, you're not supposed to copy other people's thoughts like that. You're supposed to originate the thought, right? Like we don't read the textbooks. We're supposed to be the people who write the textbooks and tell the textbook what's actually happening or share what's happening in the research. So I don't really look at what everyone's thinking and say, okay, this means that I'm wrong. It doesn't mean I can't be wrong. I've been wrong on many occasions, but I'm okay with saying, this doesn't make sense. I know this is what everybody else is doing, but I'm gonna be the black sheep over here and say something different. And what I'm gonna say over here on this topic is that I don't think you have an economy that's really built for a single person to be able to survive comfortably. That's my point. That's the key idea. And this is something that may apply to you if you're of a certain age, or it applies to your children. I just don't think that an economy where wages are going down and the cost of everything is going up I just don't, I don't think that it's built for single people to be able to do everything on their own. And I want you to just kind of consider the fact that that's not a requirement. There's no rule saying that you have to do everything by yourself. Nobody made that rule. That's a cultural thing. That's culture. What do I talk a lot about in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power? I talk about culture a lot in this book. And one thing about economic culture is that I don't think Black people should copy our culture from anybody, because a lot of your culture is crazy and ridiculous. I even this weekend, I think I talked a little bit about this rapper named Future, and there's another rapper, Nicki Minaj, who basically said that Future doesn't even use that many drugs, but he loves to rap about drugs because that'll help him make money, and so he's promoting marketing drugs. And most marketing studies will show you that hip hop music is actually the most influential kind of marketing that there is. You can't pay for that kind of influence and persuasion, right? Because it hits you at a subconscious level. And so I really think that economically speaking, you have to define your own culture. That's my point. It's sort of like if you live in a neighborhood where there's McDonald's over here, Taco Bell over here, and Wendy's over here, and you're trying to be healthy. You're maybe a vegan and you don't want to eat toxic food. You're going to have to cook at home. You got to be able to cook at home. Give me a yes if you follow what I'm saying. You have to be able to cook at home, which means that culturally speaking, you got the ratchet culture over here. You got the overspending culture over there. You got the student loan deep debt culture over there. The keeping up with the Joneses culture over here. You're going to have to cook at home. So that means that, in my view, what I hope to give you and share with you, and I don't give investing advice, when I'm talking to you guys, I just tell you what I'm thinking. But my goal is to give you the confidence to say, no, I think we're going to shape our own economic culture around here. Part of that I got from my grandmother. In case you guys don't know, the Black Business School, our Panther is named after my grandmother. Her name is Felicia. So that Panther's name is Felicia. So I take my grandmother with me wherever I go. Like if I see you guys in LA in a couple of days, I'll be in Los Angeles, by the way. You can go to boycewatkins.com if you want to join us in LA. We have a couple of seats left if you'd like to join us. I'll be bringing my grandmother with me. I cite her in every single speech I ever give because she was so important. And one of the things I loved about my grandmother was that her quote unquote strong Black woman persona, because a lot of us got those strong Black grandmothers. The way she sort of showed her strength as a Black woman was, well, two ways. One was, this was remarkable. I didn't know this until I got older. I felt guilty when I found out. My grandmother had cancer, and she would go to chemotherapy because she was a single mom. She would go to chemotherapy in the morning and then go to work in the afternoon. That's how, and didn't tell nobody that she was even going to chemo, which was crazy, right? And I was a kid, I didn't know. So if I had known, obviously as an adult, I would have picked her up, did what I could. But as a kid, I didn't know. I found out 20 years later. But that was one example. So shout out to all the strong mothers and fathers out here. I just honor you so much. But here's the other way that my grandmother showed her strength. She also showed her strength by the fact that she had her own economic culture. She had such an exhaustive economic culture that one day when I was going to write an article for Essence magazine, I believe, I had finished my PhD. I was on the faculty at Syracuse at the time, but I said, let me see if I can. My grandmother's always been really good with money. She's never had a financial problem that I've ever seen, and she doesn't make that much money. How does she do it? So she literally wrote me a list of 10 rules that she followed when it came to money. And there was some of it was like, old fashioned stuff, like 10% for your savings, 10% goes to the Lord, because she learned that from her mother and her father. Right. But these little basic rules, what this represented and what makes this brilliant, in my view, I did a whole book, I did a whole little short film. It wasn't very good, but I did it years ago called The Secrets of Black Economic Intelligence, where I talked about my grandmother's rules, where she literally had this list that she lived by. And what was brilliant about it was that she shaped her own economic culture. She didn't care what nobody else was doing. She wasn't trying to fit in with the Joneses. She wasn't trying to impress nobody. She was trying to survive. Right. So I encourage you to figure out what your economic culture is going to be, because I will tell you this. One aspect of economic culture that is absolutely failing in our society is the single ready to mingle culture, where you get people that want to say nothing wrong with you wanting to stay single forever. I'm not saying everybody should run off and get married. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I got married in my 40s. So don't think this is me telling you to go do anything other than what you're doing. But when people think about family or marriage or whatever, they tend to think about just the negative side, but they don't understand that I could show you from a mathematical standpoint how when you have multiple incomes in your household, you are economically diversified, which reduces your risk from what in economics we call these economic shocks. Economic shocks are when things happen that you don't expect. Car breaks down, somebody loses a job, somebody gets sick. in fact, to be really technical, the term that might be used is exogenous shocks. These are just these things that are outside of your control that just lead to a shock in your economic system. Give me a yes if you follow that. I don't want to talk over anybody's head. Lord, forgive me if I sound uppity trying to use long words and stuff. I went on a radio station. They were like, I think I said cognitive dissonance, and they said, "Whoa, doc, that's too much. People can't handle all those fancy words. You're talking over people's heads." And I said, so black people can't use long words? Is that what you're saying? Was that what y'all doing with these radio stations, trying to keep everybody stupid? Because I can't explain what the term means. You do know I can give a quick definition. So anyway, I'm kidding. So let's go back to that term exogenous shocks. I think you get the sense of that, right? It's when something happens that's out of your control that smacks your economic system. Well, you know what? One way to defend against that and to manage that risk is to have multiple streams of income. Also things like saving your money, investing your money, the little side hustle, that things like that. All these things are economic defense tactics that can prepare you for when things go wrong, so that you don't end up in situations where you get traumatized. Financial trauma is very real, it's very prominent. There's a lot of financial trauma, a lot in which results in a lot of financial anxiety, right? That we have because we've seen financial trauma, right? Maybe we grew up and somebody lost their job, and next thing you know, we moved from a nice house to we had to go to the hood. Or Kanye talks about it. Kanye West actually talks about when his parents got divorced, and he and his mother moved to a really dangerous part of Chicago, and he was really angry about that. Even as a 45-year-old man, he was very angry about that. So little things like divorce or someone losing a job or something breaking down or somebody getting sick, all these exogenous shocks are better protected when you have more than one person that's sort of part of your economic system, right? So the other thing that you want to consider is that when times are good and the money's flowing, you want to avoid the mistake of spending until there's nothing left, right? You want to say, okay, times are good, but times are definitely going to get bad at some point. What goes up comes down, right? This is a universal principle. If you're into, my wife is into chakras and everything, and she talks about these yin and yang ebbs and flows. What goes up comes down, what goes down comes up, that kind of thing. So if you know these things economically, then you're then in a better position to be able to protect and defend yourself. So I don't think, generally speaking, that if I'm giving advice to a young person, which I guess I am, because I'm sure some of you are very young, I would be telling them, okay, in this economy, you probably might, as soon as you can, you want to try to find some way to have some other people that you're sharing the risk with, that you're sharing the expenses with. And another thing that they may want to do is try to do it in a way where you're very careful. Like when I was in college, I had a roommate. Anybody else ever have a roommate? Like maybe you're in college and you live with somebody. I had a college roommate. And it was a terrible experience. He was my best friend, and we stopped speaking. And the reason we stopped speaking was because this sucker didn't want to pay the rent. Right. He literally went 3-4 months and didn't pay the rent, and everything was in my name, and I was mad as hell, and I wasn't, I was ready to fight him. And, and in hindsight, here's the thing. There was nothing wrong with what I did. Right. Because when things went well, it was good. The rent was lower because we were sharing the bill. But when things went bad, it got kind of terrible. So if I was to do that over again, maybe I would take some precautions, like maybe, some basic contract that you can make on Rocket Lawyer or something to make both of you responsible for those bills. Or, I don't know if how often landlords let two people put their name on the lease or something like that. Or even something, I don't know, maybe having like some sort of escrow account or something where you both have to put money in there just to that neither one of you can use unless it's for the rent or something. I don't know if that would be probably too much, but just something to create trust in that system. If we had done that, where I could have still gotten my money or had some sort of recourse, I would have been in better shape than by virtue of the fact that I literally have my name on everything. And when he didn't pay the rent, I ended up taking the responsibility for that. So the other thing I'll say to you, now, some of you are asking me about a stock that I like this week. By the way, if you log in at theblackbusinessschool.com, I did put some stocks under what Dr. Boyce is buying. So if you go to theblackbusinessschool.com, you can find that there. But one stock that I actually am buying today is a company called Nexstar Media Group. Nexstar Media Group. The ticker symbol is NXST. NXST, Nexstar Media Group. And the reason I'm buying this stock is because my research tells me that the stock has a high likelihood of being underpriced. The analysts believe that there's a lot of upside to this stock. And so I'm actually going to buy some shares. In fact, I meant to buy it, so I'm going to just buy it right now while I'm talking to you, because that's how. And I like to buy stock in front of you because I don't want you guys to overthink it. I don't want you to think it's some big prolonged process. There we go. I just bought it. So I would get in that same habit. Just have your app. Open up your app. If you see something that you like or something that you believe is worth purchasing, just get it and just move on with your day and get in that habit of consistently accumulating stocks. Like if you think about it, right? Think about someone who hoards, right? You ever see those shows where they have those hoarders who just have like way too much stuff and they need to sell something, but they refuse to sell anything because they have so much stuff there? Well, that's the exact personality that a good investor would have. A good investor, in some cases, might just be someone who hoards. But instead of hoarding like socks and old bags of potato chips, they're hoarding shares of stock. They're hoarding assets, and they're not selling those assets. They don't let those assets go. That's kind of what rich people do. Actually, the reason that a rich person is rich and that a poor person is poor is because a rich person just has more stuff. Right. Remember, before money was invented, I think money was invented. Was it maybe? I don't want to say it wrong. I believe it was 100,000 years ago. Money was invented, but it might have been 10,000. So I could be way off with the numbers. Anyway, the question you have to ask yourself is, how did you know that? How did you know the difference between a rich person and a poor person when you didn't have any money? When there was no money circulating, how did you know who was rich and who was poor? Well, the rich guy had the stuff. The rich person had all the stuff, and they had to have stuff that was valuable. So their wealth status would change based on supply and demand, right? So if I'm rich because I have a bunch of cows, and then suddenly there's too many cows, well, then I become poor because the value of a cow inherently drops because the market's been flooded with cattle, right? So ultimately, I want you to just understand it that basically, right? So if you're a person that just your entire life, every time you get spare change, you're buying a share of stock, you're buying a couple shares of this and a share of that, or whatever you can buy, you'll end up becoming a rich person because you're basically picking things up. Now, JEY says tenant in common is what is placed on the lease for single people renting. Tenant in common. Okay, it's really okay. There we go. Right, something like that on the lease. I'm not familiar with the legal stuff, but literally something to protect your rights. And also, even when you talk about things like marriage and all that, I don't tell everyone that they have to get married. I just say I think everyone should probably, if you're in a serious situation, you should probably do like a what if analysis. They call this a stress test. They call this a stress test in banking. That's where you just kind of sit back and you say, what if something goes wrong, right? What if my partner dies tomorrow? They're just dead. They're gone. I can't even go ask any questions. I can't go find out what the password was. I can't, get another nickel out of them. What if they're just dead? What do I do then, right? So a stress test is a good way to kind of imagine that, and then to say, okay, what can I do now to be sure that if something happens to that person, I can get what I need, not just on a long-term basis, but on a short-term basis too, right? So for example, if I die tomorrow and I can't talk, I'm dead, right? Or I'm in a coma or something, and my wife has to get into my bank account. Can she get into my bank account? Well, maybe at the bank, I have a document signed, which I do, that say that if something happens to me, my wife can go into my account and get the money she needs to make the mortgage payment that might be due that week. Okay. So I would encourage you to kind of think about these things. So if you have, for example, a lot of people have these long-term relationships and stuff, and I'm not knocking it. I mean, the divorce rate is pretty high, and I understand people being hesitant and being a little concerned about it. Marriage comes with pros and cons. It's not something I would tell everybody that they should or shouldn't do. Every situation is different, but I would definitely say what you want to avoid is a situation where there is no recourse, where you have no access to anything. I don't know if I told you all that story. I know I told it recently, but I don't know if I told it in this venue. But about the guy. I'll make it quick. But there's a guy I knew who's in his early 50s, and he had a young girlfriend who lived with him. And the daughter wasn't happy with the young girlfriend because she was the daughter was literally a couple years younger than this girl. And anyway, the guy goes into a coma. And so the young lady he was dating couldn't get the money she needed to pay the bills. So she did what she felt like she had to do. She broke into his phone. She put the phone up to his face and got into his bank account and took money out of the bank account to pay the bills and everything else. Well, eventually the man died. He died of a stroke. So when he died, the daughter inherited everything because he didn't make any plans for his death. He didn't have an estate plan, a will, and none of that stuff. So the daughter comes in and finally gets her revenge. She tells the girl, "You got it. You're evicted. You have nowhere to live." She takes all the stuff, right, the house, all that stuff, and then she also presses charges to get money back that she finds out that the other lady took out of her father's phone. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that I bet if her father was still alive, he probably would not agree with that, right? But when he's dead, the law takes over, right? So if he really loved this woman and they really had a meaningful relationship, then it seems to me that he would have put some kind of protection in place to make sure that she was okay if he wasn't around. And so, like, the promise I made to my youngest daughter is I said, I want to be there for you in life, and I'm also going to be there for you after I die. So I'm always going to be with you everywhere you go for your whole entire life. And the reason I repeat myself and tell you certain things is because even if I'm gone, I want my voice to be in your head when you run into a tough situation, because you're going to have to make 99% of your decisions by yourself anyway. So I would encourage you to kind of consider that if you have it, and just sort of look at your life. Just make that assessment and measure the risk and see what's what. Now, one other thing I wanted to share with you all too is that I'm going to say this. I am convinced that that Ethereum is a great investment for the future. And the reason I'm convinced that Ethereum is extraordinary is because I believe that once the Securities and Exchange Commission establishes regulatory clarity around Ethereum or around crypto, period, I think Ethereum's headed up. How soon? I don't know. Is this guaranteed? I don't know. There is no guarantee in investing, right? So this is not investing advice. Things sometimes if we take 10 shots at the basket, 4 of them won't go in, right? 9 times out of 4 of them won't. Sometimes 6 of them won't go in. Okay. In fact, in venture capital, my brother's in venture capital, and the way they invest is they literally invest under the assumption that 8 out of 10 of their investments are going to go bad. That 8 out of the 10 companies they invest in are going to go bankrupt, but it's the 2 that succeed that makes up for the ones that went bankrupt. Okay. Because with startups, it's very risky. A lot of startups fail. So, but based on the research I've done and based on my belief, I went ahead today and I increased my stake in Ethereum. And what I'm going to do now is consistently increase my stake in Ethereum for the next several years, because I believe that not only is crypto going to get its regulatory clarity, but Ethereum is going to be one of the big winners, because Ethereum is perfectly designed to develop blockchain ecosystems that are just nothing short of extraordinary. So again, that's just my 2 cents. That's just me sharing with you what my thoughts are on this. All right. So one other thing to mention too, by the way, is if you are coming to the All Black National Convention, don't forget we're going to be in Atlanta October 20th through the 22nd. You can go to allblacknationalconvention.com if you'd like to join us in Atlanta. It's going to be awesome. We got over 40 experts gathered this year. We have really worked the entire year to get this convention ready for you. And also, it's going to be kind of like a big family reunion. If you've been to the convention before, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's so much fun. And I think that you guys are going to really love what we have in store for you this year. Joanne says, give the stock symbol for Ethereum. I think if you just go into your app and just type in Ethereum, just start typing ETHER, it'll come up. But but here on Robinhood, it's just ETH. So again, nothing's guaranteed, but this is just something that I'm doing. This is something I believe. Now, if you have a question and you'd like to put your question in the Q&A section, I will answer those questions here. So let's see here. Ian Cardi says, Stash sent me a new investment prospectus. Can we elaborate as to what it is and how to read it? Do we need to read it? The investment prospectus, honestly, reading the prospectus, it's good in the sense that it gives you information about the company. It lets you know what you're getting invested in, right? But the thing about an investment prospectus, one thing it does not do is it doesn't really tell you if that stock's going to go up or down, right? The prospectus basically talks about what the company does, and when they file with the SEC, they have to share information about how they plan to make money in order to protect investors, right? So ultimately, if you want to read a prospectus for educational purposes, that makes sense. But if you want to read it from the perspective of sort of seeing it as something that's going to give you the ability to predict the stock price, just know all the researchers have concluded that that's not really possible to do. But at the very least, you should know what you're getting into. You should know what industry you're investing in, so you know the risk characteristics of what you're doing. Atasha says, can you get a discount for the A, B, and C? Chanel, I know you're in the chat. Do you have any discount codes or any links to a discount? I don't know what's on All Black National Convention. There we go. So yeah, so she's answering your question, Natasha. So just go to allblacknationalconvention.com and they put a discount code up there. So if you want to order now, you can. And I don't know if they have any more discounted hotel rooms, but you can definitely try. Let's see here. Now, do I like Bitcoin? Is it too expensive? I do like Bitcoin. Is it expensive? I don't think it is. But remember, Bitcoin has been an amazing investment over the last several years. I mean, a lot of people talk about the fact that Bitcoin crashed, but if you consider it, if you've been buying Bitcoin consistently over the last, decade or so, you'd probably be insanely rich right now. In fact, let me pull up the price of Bitcoin over the last 5 years. Yeah, the last 5 years, Bitcoin has tripled in price, even with the drop, even with the crash. If you look here on the screen, you see Bitcoin is at 25,680. But look at this, it's gone up almost 300% in the last 5 years. So if you got past the noise and worried about, a lot of people are worried about what happened between here and here, between 61,000 and 26,000. But if you're a consistent investor, remember 2018 is not that long ago. We were talking about Bitcoin in 2018. That was when they had that first Bitcoin or crypto winter. And then if you look at Max, I mean, Max is kind of insane. If you go the full length of Bitcoin, you see a 7,000% return. But let's go back to some reasonable year. Like, let's say, think about the first year you heard about Bitcoin. What was the first year that you heard about it? Put your number in the chat. When was the first year that anybody told you anything about this cryptocurrency called Bitcoin? Okay, so I'm going to say most people heard about Bitcoin maybe around 2015, 2014. So let's say 2016, though. Definitely by 2017, because I think that's when it started taking off. You see here where it's up to over 10,000. Everybody thought that's insane, right? They were just like freaking out over that. Well, imagine if you found out about Bitcoin. Let's go back to 2016, October 7th, 2016. That's when you found out about Bitcoin. And so that's the day you decided you were going to dollar cost average your way into crypto. You didn't put a ton of money in there, but you put maybe the amount of money that you might spend on fast food. Now Freddie says, 2012. If you were in Bitcoin in 2012, then you need to get on out of here because you're probably a billionaire. You don't need to listen to me because I'm not a billionaire, right? So I can show you what millionaires do because I've been a millionaire for a while, but I'm not a billionaire. So if you started investing in Bitcoin consistently, Freddie, in 2012, then God bless you and your family because I know you're very rich. All right. So anyway, let's go back to 2016, right? So October 7, 2016, that's when most people seem to be talking about Bitcoin the most. $619 is the price you would have paid for Bitcoin. Not per coin, because you didn't have to buy a whole coin. You could have bought $20 worth of Bitcoin and done that every single week, for just consistently, just auto invest. That's what you do, auto invest. The accumulation process. That's where rich people come from. They just automatically, consistently accumulate stuff, just like a hoarder, because a hoarder doesn't hoard everything at once. They hoard over time, right? It's a habit. It's a culture. It's a culture. It's culture. It's culture, right? I keep saying the word culture because I want you to think about what is your culture? What are your habits? Culture and habits are kind of connected, right? Because habits are shaped by culture, right? Like, for example, if my habit is smoking and drinking every day, that's because I live in a smoking, drinking culture. If I was in a culture that frowned on drinking and smoking, I wouldn't be smoking and drinking every day, right? So ultimately, if your habit and your culture said, I'm going to put $20 a week into Bitcoin and not even think about it. See, this is where people get in trouble. They overthink about investing. They overthink about it. So if you don't overthink it and you just consistently did this, and let's say that you were just consistently investing all this time, you ignored all the peaks, you ignored the crashes, you just kind of took note of these things because in your mind, you're thinking, I want to be a long-term investor. Because it's 2016. By the way, I was doing these classes in 2016. I was sitting here talking to you guys every single day, pretty much in 2016. So you could have been sitting here listening. Some of you have been listening to me since 2012. Okay. So, and I've been pretty consistent. I might not be always right, but you can't say I'm not consistent. And so here, You're doing this consistently. You're ignoring when the rise pops off, you're not getting overexcited about it, right? That's what good investors do. You don't get too excited when things are going well, but then you don't get too far down when things start going bad again. And then you see it go way, way up. And then you start to notice that a little bit. Then it dips again. Then it goes way, way up. Then it dips again. Dip, 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 dip. But even then, even now, where you seem to still be in the middle of a dip, right? A lot of people still think this is a crypto winter. You still made an ROI. You went from what, $600 and something per coin to 25,000 per coin. So that's what is that I'm trying to think, what's that like? Is that 50 times your original investment, or 50, that's 50x ish, right? That's a massive ROI. Let's just say that. That's probably 1,000% or something crazy like that. So ultimately, this is how you're going to get rich. This is what you're going to do. You're going to find quality investments that you believe in, and good companies and good assets that you believe in, and you're going to go to your phone after we get done, and you're going to automatically invest some small amount of money into that thing you believe in. And then what I want you to do is I want you to stop looking at the clock. Stop checking, if you can, if I could make you do something, right, which I don't tell you what to do, but I can make a suggestion. Don't look at the clock. You don't have to look at the clock. This is how my wife invests. This is how the internet is funny. The internet makes stuff up for people that never met us. And there was somebody who made a joke, and they said, "Oh, she only married him because he's rich." And they don't understand my wife already had money when she married me. And the reason, and she doesn't care about investing. She doesn't want to sit around and talk about stocks all day. She just set a certain strategy. And she just consistently invests. Every single time she gets paid, a little bit of money goes into her portfolio. She checks it about once every 2 years to see where the money's at. And every single time, almost every single time, the amount that she has 2 years later is higher than the amount she had 2 years before. That's where rich people come from. And she was not born rich. And this is important for you to understand this, because the weird thing that happened to us that was strange is that when we got rich, people thought we were born rich. There are some people who assume that we were rich our whole lives, and neither one of us started off rich. I was born in the projects. My wife was, they were let's say they were poorer than us. Let's just say that. But it's what you do, right? And the reason that this is important for me to share is because I think that for political reasons, there's a completely different narrative that gets shared that makes people almost angry at rich people or mad because someone has more money than them. And I'm not saying that there aren't reasons to be a little upset, because the country is a little bit rigged. You don't live in a country that is going to make you wealthy if you consistently make bad choices, right? You don't live in a country that's going to make sure that everybody's good, even those who make horrible financial mistakes. There is a huge penalty to pay for that, for sure. Right. As opposed to, say, Europe, parts of Europe, they don't make everyone rich. But what they do is that you can make a lot of bad choices in Europe and still get a lot of second chances and opportunities and still live a good life in a place like Denmark. Even if you're lazy, you can live good in Denmark. I know lazy people in Denmark who live okay. Right. In the U.S., you can't really do that, right? So that is probably part of the injustice that you see, and it doesn't require you to share once you get a certain amount of money. But the pathway to having at least some baseline amount of wealth or some degree of financial security is very, very clear, very, very direct. The number one barrier is psychological. The biggest barrier is that from the time you're born, every system is trained to teach you how to pour into the system and get back less than what you pour into. Like we've talked about how a job is the biggest scam in America, because a job is the only place you can go where you work your butt off for 50 years and end up with less money at the end than you had in the beginning. That's absolutely insane. So ultimately, I would say that if you go back to the basics of how an economy runs and the basics of how poor people are kept poor, you can really kind of point to three major areas. Let me write it down, because I want to make sure I say this clearly. How you deal with real estate, right? Are you a renter or are you an owner, and what are you aiming to be? If you grow up thinking, okay, my goal is to get a nice apartment, then basically you're just pouring money out, just giving money away. Also, how you work, how you make money. Are you looking to be the employee or looking to be the business owner? not saying that, no one should work for anybody, but that's another way that wealth gets extracted from you. So your rent money is extracted from you. And then when you go to work, your boss is typically going to make more money from your labor than you are. And then your consumption patterns, how you deal with commerce. Are you on the supply side or the demand side? Are you a consumer or producer? And in fact, actually, in our Black Millionaires of Tomorrow program, which it's our Black Business School for Kids, we have an acronym that pretty much describes how you should shape your child's economic thinking as a kid, and it's POISE, POISE, POISE. So we tell kids to keep your poise, and that means that when you enter in this economy and you're choosing what position you want to play, you want to play your position, right? Just like in football, you pick, do you want to be the quarterback, the wide receiver, the cheerleader, the coach, or the fan? What do you want to do, right? So in the economy, you're picking a position. So what we tell them is the positions you want to pick is you want to typically be the producer, you want to be the owner, you want to be the investor, you want to be the saver, and you want to be the entrepreneur. And that's POISE, poise. So this is an easy acronym. It's such that if a child memorizes this when they're young and they think about this as they enter into the economy, they're typically going to be wealthier than a child who doesn't think that way, because most kids are not going to come into the economy thinking like producers. They come in thinking like consumers. They're not coming in thinking like owners of property. They're thinking as renters. Let me just get a nice apartment and then get some money so I can go buy me some Jordans. They're not thinking as investors. They're thinking as borrowers, right? So debt is big in the economy. If consumers stop borrowing money, the economy would plummet to nothing. If consumers stop working, if they stop buying products, the economy will plummet to nothing. That's why in television, you'll typically see the millionaires and billionaires that are on TV encouraging people to go to work and encouraging people to spend, and kind of worry that people are going to stop spending. Like, for example, student loans are starting to kick back up. The payments are starting to start back up again. And there are a lot of people that are worried, like, whoa, what's going to happen when they start paying their student loans and they're not going to instead use their money to take trips to the mall. Okay. So anyway, let me hop back in and answer some more questions. So with the S for saver, saving is kind of simple. Again, culture is big. I talk about that in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. In Asian societies, they really save a lot of money. And I became aware of saving when I was doing a research visit to the Center for European Economic Research in Mannheim, Germany. And that was 2006. I taught in China in 2005. So I got a chance to see different economic cultures. And one of my German colleagues came into the office and said, he basically just said, "What's wrong with Americans?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. What's wrong with Germans?" Like, I don't know. Wait, that's a weird question. And he said, "Well, I looked at the data, and the data says that we make less money than you, but you spend more than we do. And we save more than you do. Like, we make less, but we save more and we spend less. You save less and spend more." And that's crazy. And so basically that led me to look into culture. And one thing I found is that other societies, saving is incentivized. In Asian culture, saving is a very big deal. In the US, saving is not very popular. Saving money is not seen as something that is the normal thing to do. And then the last piece is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship just, I think, starts when they're young, in terms of teaching them all the different ways to make money that go beyond just looking for a job. But we've talked about that, so I won't dwell on that too much. All right, so let's see. Alicia says, "Good day, blessings, Dr. Boyce. What do you think about the CBDC, central bank digital currency, and possible recall of the dollar by the U.S. government, possible on 9/23 to save the U.S.? Should we pull out of banks?" Alicia, you know what? I'd be absolutely shocked if they recalled the dollar on September 23rd. I would be absolutely shocked. The central bank digital currency, I'd have to research that a little bit more, but I think you got to be real careful about doom and gloom scenarios that some people like to throw out there. There are some economic challenges, though. Just this morning, I was listening to an analyst talk about, he said that President Biden was mentioning that he's the only president in recent memory to reduce the deficit. And the deficit is the amount that you spend over the amount that you made that year, but the deficit changes every single year. And they said that that's not really impressive that he reduced the deficit because you just came out of the pandemic where the deficit was at historic levels. It was insanely high. So it had to go down. And one of the things that they did mention is that if the U.S. sticks to this idea that they can just keep printing money and it doesn't matter how much they print, then they're ultimately going to end up seeing a decline in the value of the dollar. And that's a legitimate concern. The politicians could fix it, but they don't have the political will to do it. Both political parties are accountable for this problem. And also this problem has gotten worse because there is more, because interest rates are higher, right? So that means that now that all this debt that the government has is a much higher expense because they got to pay interest on this debt. So this is a concern. It's more of a long-term problem, but if it's something that concerns you a lot, then there are assets you can buy that can protect you against the declining dollar. A couple popular ones are gold and Bitcoin, right? Those are a couple things that that people invest in just in case the value of the dollar starts to drop or inflation doesn't get under control. You know, that's so if that concerns you, those may be things that you want to look at. All right. So yeah, I see Chanel put the link in here. Yeah, if you want to join us in LA, Chanel's got a link for the Black Wealth Training Camp in LA. You can also go to my website, boycewatkins.com, to get more information about that there. Also, the $5 a day investing plan is on my website, as well as the training on how to make money without working. So feel free to take a look at all that stuff if you'd like to see what we have going on in the Black Business School. Any thoughts on setting up a trust fund for my kids and what assets to put into the kids' trust? I don't want the kids to suffer. Yeah. One thing about a trust is you can do it yourself, although I didn't do my trust myself. You could get a lawyer to do it, but lawyers can be more expensive. But there are companies out there, there are individuals out there that specialize in trusts that are not attorneys. They can still get the job done for you. I think a trust is a great way to go. Not just because it protects assets after you're gone, but it can also protect assets while you're here. There are over 100 different types of trusts. So speaking to a speaking to a trust expert can allow you to get to the point where you can pick the trust that works for you and something that sets your family up. Okay. All right. And the other thing about trusts and kids in general is I think that things like the $5 a day plan I think are very powerful. And if you think about this, right, if you simply buy stock every week and never sell it, and you buy just a little bit every single week, and you do that from the time the child's born, and then you make sure your child isn't crazy, that they don't throw away all their money, your child can be at a point where they never have to work for anybody. I mean, I think that even that assumption that your child has to be somebody's employee is a false assumption. You don't have to work for someone. I know maybe people think that that's just true because you're Black. You don't have to work for anybody, and I explained it to my daughter by letting her know. I said, you know that the difference between freedom and slavery for most people, because work is kind of like slavery, not in the traditional sense, but in the sense that you can't do what you want to do, right? Where someone else is controlling your actions and activities. I said, the difference between freedom and slavery for most people is about $4,000 or $5,000 a month. If so to me, the goal is to say, can I put my child in a position where they can make $4,000 or $5,000 a month without having to work for somebody else? So let's say somebody did the $5 a day investing plan. So by the time their child's like 25 or 30 years old, they have somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 liquid. If they manage that money properly, they can survive off that money. And if they had it, say, invested, and they did something like what we do in the Prime program, where we sell stock options, right, and make income from stock options, so they can make more money doing that, a couple $1,000s a week, like literally $100,000 a year in income, and still maintain the asset base. And what's happened there is you're kind of thinking of the individual the same way we fund a foundation, or we fund a corporation, or we fund a university. The way universities survive is they have this thing called an endowment. And all the endowment is it's just a big pile of resources that they can lean on when they run into financial problems, right? If they have financial struggles, when they have financial problems, they're able to sort of turn to this endowment to get them through a tough time. So effectively with your kids, you're just endowing them. You're giving them an endowment And the endowment is kind of cool in the sense that it then frees up their life for them to actually do the things they want to do. But it's also important to make sure that you don't curse them the way a lot of rich kids get cursed. Um, a lot of my sense of purpose came from the struggle of trying to figure out how to make a dollar out of 15 cents, how to hustle to the next level. That was the joy of my life, right? So I think that if you give the child just a bunch of money and they never have to do anything, they remember that idle mind is the devil's workshop. So if they're sitting at home all day, they're getting into stuff that's unhealthy, maybe drugs or whatever. So I think giving them a sense of purpose, helping them understand, why things like education and training and travel and all this stuff are valuable beyond just doing things to make money, that goes a long way. So I think that you have to be just enough of a capitalist to have a capital base, and then at that point, I'm a little bit more like a Marxist at that point, because I'm more into all the things that money can't buy. Money is really not that important for me, to be honest with you. It's only important when you don't have enough, right? So, but everybody's different. All right, so let's see here. Let's see. Nelly says, I have an appointment 9/13 for planning my estate. Guilty of putting it off. Thanks to you for stressing the need of planning. Yeah, good for you. Good for you, Nelly. Just pick a day and just say, okay, today's the day that I'm gonna go ahead and make a plan. And and it's okay. A lot of us put it off. Thinking about death is hard. It's not fun to imagine yourself dying. Like, who wants to think about that? Or talking to your mama about her death. I mean, Lord, that's almost like it almost feels like bad luck, like you're doing something that's gonna cause her to die. But it kind of sucks. But yeah, mamas die and daddies die too. It makes me sad. I agree. I'm right there with you. Barbara Jones says, I own 37 shares of Ford stock and I want to get that up to 100. Are you buying Ford stock right now? I do own stock, Barbara, but I'm not buying more, but I do own some Ford. Yes. What are my thoughts on Under Armour? Let's see. UAA. Let me see. Under Armour. Would I buy Under Armour? Okay, let's see. It looks like the stock. Ooh, this stock has done terribly this year. Ooh, no. Not telling you what to do. This is not investing advice, but no, Under Armour is not my jam. Sorry. How do you feel about the IPO ARM? Is that a company, Rarick? ARM? I don't know anything about ARM as a company. Yeah, you gotta. I'll look up. Let me see. I'll look at the ticker symbol ARM. I don't see a stock under that ticker, so maybe you can explain a little bit more to me, and I can answer your question. Next question. How do I avoid the Medicaid conversion when opening up a trust? You know what? That's a question for your trust professional. I'm not an expert on trust. So I cannot, that specific rules and laws and things like that. I'm not an attorney. So that would have to be a question consulted for a tax expert or an attorney. Can I make my trust the beneficiary of my accounts since my kids are under 16? Yes, you can do that, from what I understand about trust. What assets can I place in the trust? A home, another investment account? Yes, you can place all those things inside a trust. I put some things in our trust, just assets that mostly financial assets and property, but you could put other things in there too. I didn't invest in a 529 plan for them for college because I was going through a divorce at the time, and I myself had student loans. Okay. Well, I'm sorry about the divorce. Okay, so now that you're out of the divorce, it's not too late to prepare for college. But I think that there are creative ways to keep the cost of college down. I also don't think there's anything wrong with letting your child assume some of their loans so it doesn't all fall on you. A lot of families take on their kids' loans while they're making a lot of money. And then when you hit retirement, it kind of kicks you in the butt. So I kind of believe in more of a 50-50 approach. Okay, let's see. My Robinhood account was suspended. What's another app you prefer? I like E-Trade. And then you got Stash and Acorns. Those are easy to use. Webull, I've heard good things about Webull. I don't use Webull, but I've heard good things about it. So there's quite a few out there. I'm sorry about your Robinhood account. I hope they gave you your money back. Is Interactive Brokers a safe, reliable place to have my investments? Interactive Brokers, I think I saw good reviews on Interactive Brokers. I haven't heard anything bad about them. I can't recommend them, though, because I've never tried them, but I haven't heard anything bad. Barbara, I want to buy Tesla and Amazon stock, but I don't have the money to buy 100 shares. The other option is that I use the stock replacement option. Can you walk us through buying one of these stocks using a stock replacement strategy? Okay, so you know what, Barbara, since we're not covering options today, I can't quite take us through the entire strategy, but I can describe it for you. Also, if you did the stock options training camp, all that material was saved, and we did do the stock replication strategy. But just to kind of arm wave it and explain what that is, the stock replication strategy is where you basically replicate ownership of the stock by buying an option that is what I call deep and wide, meaning that you buy something with a that's already in the money, so it's a deep in the money option, and wide it gives you a lot of time. So if you buy a stock or if you buy an option that's already in the money, and you give yourself, say, a year or 2 years till the maturity time, then you kind of get the same sensation that you would get if you actually own the stock. Okay, so effectively, I did this with Amazon and Chipotle, especially back when Amazon and Chipotle were dipping. When everything dipped, I did that with Amazon and Chipotle because I didn't want to pay the full price of the stock. Chipotle stock was like $2,000 a share, something like that. So by doing the replication strategy, let's say I paid for the options, instead of paying $2,000, I paid maybe 200 or 300 or something. But remember, though, it's a replication, so it's not like I actually own it, but you get the sensation of owning it. So I would compare it to like if you if you're thinking about buying a house and someone says, well, you can't buy this house because it costs too much, but you can rent the house for 2 years. Well, that's almost like owning it, but you're still not the owner, right? But you still get a lot of the effects of owning the house. So the stock replication strategy, that's how you would execute it. I can't do an example right now today because we're almost out of time, but that's what you can do. And also, again, if you log in for the stock options training camp, everything's recorded. Also, stockoptionsmasterclass.com. If anybody wants to learn about options, if you go to stockoptionsmasterclass.com, options with an S, there's some stuff in there from a masterclass that I did on options, and we cover specifically the stock replication strategy among many other strategies. All right, so 3 more questions, and then we're gonna head on out. What do you think about 3D? DDD is a stock. Okay, let me look at DDD. I will eyeball it real quick. And 3D Systems. Okay, it's a $6 stock. It has done terribly. Not that you're terrible, but the stock has done terribly, Therese. So it looks like you're looking to buy the dip on the stock. Let me just say this. This company looks like it's having some significant problems. It's losing money. The analysts don't like it. I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest with you. The only time you can end up luckily making money on stocks like this is maybe if they go from like horrible to just bad, like so, which is an uptick, right? And then you make a quick ROI. But as far as a long-term investment, I don't really trust what I see with this company. I feel like this company is going to have a hard time surviving in a high interest rate environment because they're not good at making money yet. They've been losing millions of dollars for years. So I personally would not mess with the stock. This is not investing advice, but I don't like what I see. All right, so let's see. Dr. Boyce, what vehicle do I put the $5 a day in my account out of my kids? Because I recall your view on custodial accounts. Yeah, great question. Great way for us to end the conversation because I want us to have an action item, a homework assignment. So don't forget, at my website, boycewatkins.com, there is the $5 a day investing plan. You can get this for free. If you want it in book form, there's a book I put on Amazon that doesn't cost much that you can get where you can actually read it, but you don't have to really do all that. I can just describe it to you. You can go to my website. It's there. Basically, the $5 a day plan, for those that don't know, is where you put $5 a day into some sort of mutual fund for your kids, right? And the funds that I pick to make it super easy, again, a 4-year-old could do this, is are Victor Oscar VOO for Vanguard and SPY, Sierra Papa Yankee. See, notice I'm getting better with the phonetic alphabet. Y'all know I'm training for my pilot's license, so I'm getting better at remembering all the phonetic alphabet letters. But anyway, in terms of the kind of account, I think just a regular account will do. And what it is, and it's deceptively simple, but it's overwhelmingly powerful because it allows you to easily capture the amazing power of compound interest. But the key thing about compound interest is to capture it, you gotta do something, you gotta consistently accumulate something. You gotta have some money to start making money, right? But your money has naturally what I refer to in my book as financial fertility. Your money is naturally fertile. Your money's like a bunch of bunny rabbits. You put a bunch of bunny rabbits in a pen, then you're going to have a bunch of babies. Those you're going to have natural multiplication. But if there's no bunny rabbits in the building, then no rabbits will be born. So your dollar has that effect. Compound interest is very fertile. And so effectively by doing $5 a day, all I'm asking you to do is to set it consistently to make that investment $35 a week or $140 a month. Forget about it and don't sell your stock. That's all you got to do. Don't sell the stock. This is for the babies, right? And I did the math for you guys before. I'll do it again just because I want us to drill this in our head. Approximately $29,000 after 10 years, approximately $102,000 after 20 years, approximately $250,000 after 30 years. There's no guarantees because the future is unpredictable with the stock market. But if someone had done this for you in the 1970s, 1980s, you would have no financial problems. You never would have had a financial problem in your life. Okay. And so, remember, the $5 a day amount is for poor people, for those who are struggling financially. That's the low number. If you're not struggling and you're doing well, or let's say you're like the average American who's spending over $700 a month on new car notes, or the average used car note is now $500 a month. Well, then why not up that a little bit? Again, I've simply made the simple cultural challenge of saying, at least make a conscious decision that your child is more important than a car note. Not that you can't pay the car note, but your child is at least equally important to your car note. Because if you take that logic, and let's say you're doing $450 or $600 a month, then those numbers are multiplied by 3 or multiplied by 4, right? So instead of 29,000, so let's multiply by 4. So instead of 29,000 after 10 years, your kid has about 120,000 approximately, right? Instead of 102,000 after 20 years, it now goes to 400,000. Instead of $250,000 after 30 years, you're talking about $1 million. The child's a millionaire because of you, because you made a plan, you stuck with it, and you did some basic things that anybody could do. If I was to go back in time for most people and take all the money that they put into fast food, shoes, iPhones, going to the club, going out to eat, and put a fraction of that money into a consistent stock portfolio, every single person would be rich. We'd have more money in our community than every other community out here. So it's really, so the goal is not to change, the job situation or to change income levels. We just have to change culture. If we change culture, then everything else changes. Okay. So BoyceWatkins.com is where that $5 a day plan is located. Also BoyceWatkins.com. I see some of you are asking about upgrading. Someone was asking about upgrading for the LA event. I will be in LA on the 8th and the 9th doing a 2-day Black Wealth training camp. So if you want to join us or upgrade your tickets, things like that, a lot of that information is on my website, BoyceWatkins.com, and you've got Chanel in the chat. She can help you with that. Now let's see. Albert is asking about MUR. Let's see here. MUR, Murphy Oil. Looks like it's had a good 5-year run. It's okay. It's not a terrible. I mean, if you wanted to get into the oil industry, they're a holding company. They do exploration and production of oil and gas. Not a terrible investment if oil is of interest to you. I don't think I'd invest in it, but only because there's so many thousands of assets out here. But I mean, it's been able to provide a decent return for investors over the last 5 years. So I don't hate it. So that would be my 2 cents. Not investing advice, but that's my thinking. All right. So a couple more questions, then we're done. Rarick, parents, be careful when getting student loans in their name because they want to be eligible for student loan forgiveness. They won't be if the parent gets the loan. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for saying that. Let's see. Therese says, I heard what you said about DDD. What about for options? Okay. Would I sell options on DDD? Let's see. It was DDD. Was that 3D Systems? Yeah. Okay. No, I just don't like this company much at all, to be honest with you. Maybe you could justify owning it to sell the options, but it looks like a stock that's kind of having some problems. So this is a patient that doesn't look like it's going to get well anytime soon. How do you set up a holding company? Oh, that's a whole nother whole nother conversation. So we can get to that one next time. So anyway, guys, I hope this conversation was good for you. I hope that you benefited from this discussion. Just a reminder, if you want to go to the All Black National Convention, you go to allblacknationalconvention.com. We meet October 20th in Atlanta at the Marriott Marquis, and the discounted hotel rooms. I don't know if they're still available, but they may be. So feel free to check that out. Also, if you want to join us in LA, you can go to boycewatkins.com. The information's right there. If you want to do neither one, that's fine too. All my books, my Black American Money series, everything else, even if you want me to sign the book and send it to you, you can go to drboycebooks.com, and drboycebooks.com. The books are there. Even my wife's books are there. So if you go there and search for Alicia, you can see her books on therapy and things like that. She did a really good workbook on managing financial anxiety. So as you know, she's a licensed therapist and a full professor of social work. And of course, on boycewatkins.com, the training on how to make money without working and all that stuff is there too. So there's plenty of resources we have for you in the Black Business School. And I want to say God bless all of you, and I hope you have a great day. And I will see you all soon. I'm about to go get on this plane and head to